to move on to Malachi Nelson from UTEP. Bill, do you want to kick this one off?
Yeah, so if Malachi Nelson is a fun prospect because this is a guy that, we're talking 20 career attempts at this point. So most of what you're going to get it from him is a projection, but 6'3", 190, a very quick athlete, probably going to be somewhere in the 4.5 range in terms of his speed and his ability there. The throws that he does make do have good velocity. He does have very good arm strength. He does have very good touch, especially if you watch a couple of his throws where he was throwing fade routes and back shoulders. He does have good touch on those. He also is 190 pounds, so he has the ability to add on mass without losing his athletic ability. Turnovers are a major concern when you look at his game, because yes, he has some touch, but the ball placement's erratic at best. At worst, it looks like a shotgun at 500 yards. In addition to that, his ball security becomes very shaky when he tries to extend plays. He holds it out there like he's trying to donate a loaf of bread to a homeless man. And I want to see him clean that up. He's got to, or it's going to lead to some serious turnovers. I'm a little bit higher on him. I've got a late round 5, early round 6 grade as far as a projection. He is a redshirt sophomore, so he can certainly come back to school. When I look at him, I see a lot of Kevin Cobb in his game in terms of what he can be, and I think he can end up being that Kevin Cobb-like, game manager you won't win because of, but he certainly won't lose you the game. And I think this year at UTEP is going to be pivotal for him to do that. But Durst, what do you have on Malachi Nelson?
So to go back just a little bit, he was a 5-star high school recruit and the 5th ranked by the consensus rankings. I think some of them had him like number 3 or number 2, but basically by the composite, he was the 5th ranked quarterback. Some of the things in the ESPN 300, which is a recruiting service, they wrote down: he had the quickest release in the class, accurate to all 3 levels of the field, can throw a touch. He's a mature quarterback who already shows high football IQ, decision making, and processing. But again, that's his high school profile. Then he goes on to lose the quarterback competition to Miller Moss at USC. So then it looked like a bad thing at one point in time when Miller Mouse was like tearing it up versus LSU in the opening game of the season. But as the season went on and Miller Moss eventually ended up losing his job and having to transfer to Louisville, it's like, okay, how come he lost the quarterback competition? So of course he ended up transferring to Boise State, and then he lost his quarterback competition to Maddox Madsen, who is 5'10" and will never sniff the NFL. So again, there's a lot of concerns about why he wasn't able to beat out these guys. So he thought to be the heir apparent of Caleb Williams at USC. Nelson is worlds away from where analysts thought he would be at this point, and looks like a long shot to ever make it to the NFL. If he hopes to turn things around, he have to stay on the field in 2024, gain some experience, and probably return to college at least for the 2026 season. Now, let's just say that hypothetically he sets the world on fire at UTEP. To have it in perspective, UTEP has had 4 players drafted since 2008. 4 players combined since 2008. They've had 2 quarterbacks drafted since 1973. So you're not going to get that kind of analysis on the NFL Stock Exchange or So but of the 20 reps that we saw, or the 20 passing attempts, he looks good he's got a couple of under center reps at Boise State. He looks good on rollouts. His release looked compact and fast. And in mop-up duty, at one point, I saw him complete a 3rd and 24 against Portland State for whatever that was worth. So he looks real thin. He's got a long way to go, but theoretically has 3 seasons to get it done. Anthony, what do you think about Malachi Nelson?
Yeah, I think you guys hit a lot of the key points. I feel like when I have to watch high school film to understand a player, it's really not worth giving them like the full evaluation. Because I think Billy, you hit a lot of it. He's very athletic in the pocket. He's has a quick release. He's able to manipulate the pocket well and make throws downfield. You see those things as a high schooler, but like Durst said, he's now lost 2 starting jobs, one of them to a non-factor when it comes to NFL prospects. And now he's at UTEP, which, as Durst very eloquently explained, is not known for their quarterback history. And when I was reviewing Malachi and thinking about, his path and his journey so far from 5-star prodigy to whatever this is now. Last week we were talking about Dante Moore, and we praised Dante Moore for making the decision to intentionally go to Oregon, sit behind Dylan Gabriel, and develop for a year before now taking the starting job at Oregon. Now, there's a world where Malachi did not have that opportunity because he was never going to get the starting job at all.
Yep.
But if he had just sat behind Caleb Williams and then if he lost the job to Miller Moss at in 23, and then just waited, still had Lincoln Riley as his head coach. Miller Moss leaves to Louisville now. Could he have beaten out, I think, Jaden Maeva is going to be the starter there this year?
Yeah, Jaden Maeva will be the starter.
So there's a world where he loses that starting job too. I'm not saying like it's a guarantee that he would have been the starter at USC this year. But it just feels like for where he is now, what he really could have used was a consistent atmosphere and true development. Because clearly, if he's lost 2 starting jobs, he's behind somewhere. I don't know where that is because we haven't really. He's taken 20 snaps in college,
yeah.
So there's really no way of knowing what his big problem is. And maybe it has nothing to do with his play. Maybe it's some sort of, problem he's having with off the field stuff or coaches or whatever. I don't know. I'm not insinuating anything. But
so, does anybody have the scouting report on his birthday party?
Can't say
no, but for what it's worth, one of his potential weapons at tight end has the all-time best name for a tight end in Cash Cheeks. I'm not making that up. That's what it's listed. That's an all-time name, 100%. But I think
Heisman Trophy winner right there.
Yeah, I think Anthony hit the nail on the head too. If he hadn't gone to UTEP and stayed at USC, I think it probably would have been much better for his development because your choices are Dana Dimel and Scotty Walden or Lincoln Riley, who's shown a path to develop multiple Heisman quarterbacks. So, yes, you may not have had the chance to win the starting job, but the experience you would have gained there is significantly. And I understand wanting to move on. And we just talked about it with Connor Weigman too, him needing to move on and get past his Texas A&M days and start fresh. But considering you have less than 30 attempts in your career, there isn't much really that you need to start over at this point. So I'm curious to see how he develops. Obviously, it's another one of the redshirt sophomores that we've kind of talked about throughout this series that likely comes back for another year. And I think when we come back in 2027, we'll look back on it and say either we were spot on with Nelson or we were completely off the mark.
I'll just add one more thing. So, I mean, of course, when he transferred from USC to Boise State, that's right after Taylon Green had left Boise State for Arkansas. So, I mean, it looked like, I can pair up with Ashton Genty and there's an opening here for a quarterback. And I mean, it kind of seemed like the right thing to do, but then he lost the job. So that's when things really went off the rails for him.
Yep.
And again, because we don't know why he lost the job. Like maybe a different quarterback had received the promise or right. Like I'm going to say head coaches are not infallible, Right, because they're trying to recruit players to get them to come in. So the head coach had to make a promise to somebody to get them to come in because they want insurance at the position. Right, like
Right.
I'm on record as saying I don't think Arch Manning should have stayed at Texas. If he was going to be playing behind Ewers, you're better off putting tape than sitting 2 years in the bench.
Yeah.
Right, but sitting 1 year on the bench, that's okay. But sitting 2 years on the bench, you at least need to go somewhere where you're going to be putting tape out. That's the only way you get to the next level, unless you're Matt Castle. Right? Because
Yeah,
like Matt Castle was a
true.
backup that actually had an NFL career, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Right.
I'd also argue that Quinn Ewers never should have been starting over Arch Manning, and Quinn Ewers should not be starting on any football team at this point. But that is another hill that I don't think we want me to die on tonight.
No, we don't want anybody dying in any hills. It's early on Friday night. We don't need any dying on hills.
Right.
So the next quarterback